Usually, um, when we look at the physical world, there's this really ingrained expectation of, just absolute precision.
Oh, totally. Like unbreakable rules.
Right. Think about a game of billiards.
Yeah.
You strike the cue ball, it flies across the green felt, it shatters the rack.
Yeah, that initial break.
Exactly. And in that exact fraction of a millisecond of impact, the trajectory of every single ball on that table is entirely fixed.
It's pure geometry, really. Pure physics.
I mean, if you knew the mass of the balls, the force of the strike, the friction of the felt, wait, I shouldn't use pauses like that. If you know all those variables, the math just points and says, that is exactly where it goes.
Yeah, there's absolutely no mystery to it. It is entirely a closed system.
Right.
The energy transfers, the angles dictate the bounce, and, well, the outcome is just inevitable before the balls even stop rolling.
And we find a lot of comfort in that, right? That
Yeah.
kind of predictable mechanical universe.
We do, yeah.
Right.
Because it means the world makes sense. It's, reliable.
But then you look at human life. You look at our own minds, and suddenly that billiard table gets incredibly complicated.
Oh, incredibly. The math gets a lot fuzzier.
Yeah. Because we walk through our days feeling utterly convinced that we are the ones holding the cue stick, deciding the game.
We feel the weight of our choices every single day.
Exactly. But the lingering question, and honestly the one that has broken the brains of brilliant people for centuries, is whether we're actually the player making the choice.
Or if we are just another ball bouncing off the cushions.
Right. Just being propelled by physical forces we can't even see.
It's the ultimate diagnostic quagmire. I mean, it really is. Are you authoring your life, or are you just a remarkably complex domino falling exactly as physics demands?
Which is exactly why we are tackling this today. For you listening, this deep dive is the third installment in our series, exploring the core branches of philosophy.
The foundation of everything, really.
Yeah. In the earlier parts of this series, we laid down some basic epistemological groundwork. But before we can truly dive into the history of philosophy or analyze how specific societies built their ethics, we have to establish the baseline rules of reality.
You literally have to. You can't skip this step.
No, you really can't. We have to look at the foundational tools that frame literally everything else we experience. And nothing is more foundational than free will versus determinism.
No, you simply cannot build a functional worldview without checking this foundation first.
Right, because it touches everything.
It really does. You can't discuss the justice system. You can't discuss personal guilt or forgiveness. I mean, you can't even discuss history without first asking what kind of universe we're operating in.
Are people making free choices, or is the universe just playing itself out?
Exactly. Are we writing the script or just reading the lines?
So the mission today is to explore that exact tension. We are synthesizing a massive amount of material for this one.
Oh, yeah. A really huge stack of sources.
I mean, we're drawing on everything from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy to the ancient treatises of Aristotle and Epicurus.
Moving right through classical thinkers like Thomas Hobbes and David Hume.
Right, all the way to modern philosophy with Harry Frankfurt. And we aren't just staying in the armchair either.
No, we have to bring the science into it.
We really do. We're crashing all of that ancient and modern philosophy right into cutting-edge neuroscience, like Benjamin Libet's brain experiments and even quantum mechanics.
Which gets pretty wild, honestly.
It gets super wild. But the goal is to give you a comprehensive, definitive understanding of exactly where human agency fits into the cosmos.
And the fascinating thing is that the core anxiety here, it hasn't actually changed since the ancient Greeks were arguing in the Stoa.
Just the tools have changed, right?
Exactly. Only our tools for investigating the anxiety have evolved. We've basically traded togas for MRI machines, but we are still asking the exact same question.
Am I in control?
Am I in control? Yeah.
So to figure that out, we have to establish the actual rules of the game. Because people throw around words like determinism and fate at dinner parties all the time, and they almost always conflate them.
Oh, constantly. They use them totally interchangeably.
Right. So let's start by pinning down causal determinism. Mechanically speaking, how does this actually work?
Well, let's strip away the philosophical jargon for a second. Causal determinism is just the idea that every single event that happens is necessitated by prior events, combined with the laws of nature.
Okay, so prior events plus nature's laws.
Yeah. Imagine the universe at any given millisecond as a complete static snapshot.
Like pausing a movie.
Precisely like pausing a movie. Now, if you take that exact snapshot, the position and energy of every subatomic particle, every chemical state, every single photon of light, and you apply the unbreakable laws of physics to it.
Just run the math on the snapshot.
Right, run the math.
Yeah.
Determinism dictates that there is only one possible next frame. The state of the world right now guarantees the state of the world in the very next moment.
So there's no wiggle room.
Zero wiggle room. If you were to rewind the universe all the way back to the Big Bang and hit play again, everything would happen exactly the same way.
Wow. Every single thing.
Every single thing. You would be sitting here listening to this deep dive at this exact second. There is zero variation.
That concept alone is incredibly heavy.
Mm.
But it was pushed to its absolute logical extreme in the 18th century by Pierre-Simon Laplace.
Oh, yeah. Laplace really took it there.
He did. The thought experiment he came up with, Laplace's demon, is honestly terrifying when you really sit with it.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the deterministic nightmare. It really is.
So break it down for us. What is this demon?
Well, Laplace imagined a theoretical superintellect. We call it a demon today, but not in a malevolent, pitchfork-wielding sense.
Right. Not a literal monster from hell.
No, just a being of infinite computational capacity. Laplace proposed that if this intellect knew the precise location and momentum of every single atom in the entire universe right now,
Which is a lot of atoms.
an unfathomable amount. But if it knew all of them, and if it completely understood all the physical forces acting upon those atoms,
It would basically have the ultimate source code of reality.
it absolutely would. And to this intellect, if it's subjected all that data to perfect mathematical analysis, the concept of uncertainty would just vanish entirely.
Uncertainty wouldn't even exist for it.
No. The future would be as clearly laid out before its eyes as the past. It could calculate the exact moment a specific raindrop will hit a specific blade of grass 1,000 years from now.
That is insane.
It is. But more uncomfortably, it could calculate the exact chemical reactions happening in your brain that led you to choose your current career.
Oh, like marry your spouse?
Exactly. Or decide to listen to this audio overview right now.
See, that is the part that makes my stomach drop. Because when I decided what to wear this morning, I agonized over it.
We all do. It feels like a real struggle.
Yeah. I stood in my closet, I weighed the options, I looked at the weather on my phone, I changed my mind twice. It felt intensely like a free choice.
It feels very real in the moment.
But Laplace's demon looks at that and says, well, no, based on the neurochemistry you woke up with, the temperature of the room, and the firing of your synapses, you are always going to put on the blue shirt.
Yep. The demon saw the blue shirt coming 1,000,000 years ago.
So my feeling of agonizing over the choice was just, the subjective experience of the math working itself out.
That's exactly it. The deliberation itself is just part of the machinery. You are feeling the gears turn and, you're confusing that feeling for the ability to change the direction of the gears.
Wow. Okay, but there is an even weirder twist to this that I had never really considered until diving into this material.
You're talking about the timeline symmetry, right?
Yes, because we always think about determinism moving forward, the past locking in the future. But the math goes both ways. Bidirectional determinism?
This is a profound and honestly an often ignored symmetry in physics.
Explain that, because it kind of broke my brain.
Well, for a wide class of physical theories, the laws are time reversible, meaning a total specification of the state of the world right now, along with the laws of physics, doesn't just rigidly fix everything that will happen tomorrow.
It fixes yesterday, too.
Exactly. It rigidly fixes everything that happened yesterday.
Because if the equation works forward, it has to work backward. Like, if I have the answer to a math problem and I know the rules of arithmetic, I can reverse engineer the exact inputs.
Yes. The present state of the world entails the past just as strictly as it entails the future.
That is so counterintuitive.
It is, because our ingrained human habit is to view causation as moving strictly from the past to the present. We think the past is concrete and the future is open.
Right, like the future is a blank page.
But fundamental determinism doesn't give the past special ontological status. The relationships of physical necessity lock the entire timeline, past, present, and future, into one solid, unchangeable block.
A solid block of time. I mean, that is just wild to visualize.
It's called the block universe theory, and it's a very real perspective in physics.
Okay, but I want to clarify a massive misconception here, because it's so easy to slip into nihilism when you hear this kind of thing.
Very easy. People get very depressed very quickly.
Right. So we have to separate determinism from fatalism, because they sound identical to the average person, but confusing them leads to a completely broken view of the world.
The distinction is absolutely vital. Fatalism is the thesis that a specific event is destined to happen no matter what you do.
No matter what.
Right. It's a mystical, often teleological concept. Think of Greek tragedies like Oedipus.
The oracle says you're going to do something, and you do it.
Exactly. It's the idea of a destiny written in the stars. If you are fated to die in a plane crash on a Tuesday, fatalism suggests that even if you refuse to go to the airport, lock yourself in a concrete bunker and hide under a desk.
Something crazy will happen.
Right. Some bizarre sequence of events will magically drag you onto a plane, or a plane will spontaneously fall right on your bunker. The outcome is fixed independently of the causal chain.
Got it. So it's like a movie script where the ending is already written, and if an actor tries to improvise and run off the set, the director will just grab them, drag them back, and force them to hit their mark.
That's a great way to put it. The ending happens despite their actions.
But determinism doesn't say that at all, does it?
Not at all. Determinism says the event happens precisely because of your actions.
Let's apply the domino analogy here. That really helped me.
Yeah, dominoes are perfect for this. A domino doesn't fall because of destiny or some mystical script. It falls because the domino immediately behind it knocked it over with physical force.
It's just physical contact.
Exactly. Under determinism, your actions, your choices, your physical movements are the crucial, necessary links in the causal chain.
So under determinism, if I lock myself in the bunker, I don't die in the plane crash.
Correct. You don't die in the plane crash.
So my action mattered.
It mattered immensely. But determinism says that the prior causes, like your psychology, your fear of flying, the article you read about plane crashes, those things inevitably led you to lock yourself in the bunker.
Oh, I see.
You changed the outcome, but your choice to change the outcome was itself determined by the prior state of the universe.
So there is no magical script pushing me around from the outside. I am the domino, I am doing the falling, and I am actively knocking over the next piece.
You are an active participant in the chain, you just aren't the one who started the chain.
Man, but this brings us to the absolute core of the anxiety here. If I am just a domino falling because the Big Bang knocked over the first piece billions of years ago, what happens to morality?
Yeah, that's the big one.
What happens to our sense of right and wrong?
You are hitting on the exact reason philosophers have agonized over this for millennia. The stakes aren't just abstract physics, the stakes are human society.
Our entire legal and moral system.
Precisely. The entire concept of moral responsibility rests on something called basic desert.
Basic desert, like basically getting what you deserve.
Yes. We generally hold a deeply intuitive belief that people deserve praise when they do something exceptionally selfless.
Like saving someone from a fire.
Right. And we believe they deserve blame or punishment when they do something malicious. And we believe they deserve this simply because of the action itself.
Not just as a warning to others.
Exactly. Not just as a deterrent to keep others from committing crimes, but because they inherently earned that moral judgment.
Basic desert requires that the action was up to them, right? Like if a hurricane blows my neighbor's car through my living room window, I don't sue my neighbor for vandalism.
No, you don't. That would be absurd.
Right, because I don't hold them morally responsible because the movement of the car wasn't up to them. The hurricane forced the action.
That is the intuitive standard we all use. We blame people only when they had control. And this tension gave rise to one of the most famous and devastating arguments in modern philosophy.
The consequence argument.
Yes, the consequence argument, most carefully articulated by Peter van Inwagen. It is a logical fortress that forces us to question if anyone has ever actually been in control of anything.
Let's walk through this consequence argument step by step, because from what I read, it is essentially the main weapon used to destroy the idea that we can be morally responsible in a deterministic universe.
It is very hard to dismantle. The logic is elegantly brutal. It operates on a few totally undeniable premises.
Okay, lay them out for me.
Step 1. If determinism is true, then our present acts are the necessary consequences of the laws of nature and events in the remote past.
Okay, the domino chain. I can trace my action today back to my brain chemistry yesterday, back to my childhood, back to my ancestors, all the way back to the formation of the solar system.
Perfectly stated. Step 2. It is categorically not up to us what went on before we were born. You have zero ability to change the remote past.
Hard agree. I definitely can't change the 1800s.
Obviously not. Step 3. It is also not up to us what the laws of nature are. You cannot alter the gravitational constant.
No, I can't.
Or the laws of thermodynamics, or the specific way neurons fire in a human brain.
Also undeniably true.
Therefore, Van Inwagen concludes the present consequences of those two things, the remote past and the laws of physics, are not up to you.
Wait, let me process that.
Think of it like math. If A and B are out of your control and A plus B equals C, then C is out of your control.
So since my present actions are the direct consequences of those things, my present actions are not up to me.
Exactly. You lack what philosophers call the categorical ability to do otherwise. If you hold the past and the laws of physics fixed, you could only ever make the one single decision you actually made.
Wow. When you lay it out strictly like that, it feels completely inescapable.
It is a very tight logical trap.
If I can't change the past, and I can't change physics, and my actions are literally just the collision of the past and physics, then my feeling of control is a complete hallucination.
And the philosopher Galen Strawson takes this feeling of helplessness even further. He has something called the infinite regress argument.
Oh, I remember reading about this.
All right.
It's a headache in the best way.
It really is. Strawson ties free will directly to ultimate moral responsibility. He points out that to be truly, ultimately responsible for a specific action, you must be responsible for the character or the mental state that produced that action.
That totally tracks. If I spend years, freely choosing to be a greedy, selfish person, I am responsible when I eventually embezzle money from my company.
Yeah.
My character caused the action.
Yeah, sure. But Strawson asks the fatal question, how did you choose that character?
Right.
To deliberately, freely choose to be a selfish person, you must have had a prior character that evaluated the options and made that choice.
And decided that being selfish was the way to go.
Exactly. But for that choice to be free, you must be responsible for that prior character, which requires another prior character.
It's just an infinite loop backward.
It's an impossible infinite regress. Ultimately, you hit a biological and chronological wall. You realize that your initial character was formed by genetics, by how your parents raised you, by your early childhood environment.
All things I absolutely did not choose.
Exactly. Therefore, true ultimate responsibility is impossible. You are the way you are because of things entirely outside your control, so how can you possibly be blamed for what you do?
Let's ground this in reality for you listening, because this gets so abstract. Think about your daily life. If someone cuts you off in traffic, almost sideswipes you, and flips you off.
We've all been there.
Right. Your blood pressure spikes. You are furious. But does the consequence argument mean your anger is totally irrational? Because essentially, the Big Bang and the laws of physics force that person to cut you off.
It leads to an extremely uncomfortable philosophical corner, which is known as hard determinism.
Hard determinism.
Yeah. If determinism destroys the ability to do otherwise, and if moral responsibility requires that ability, then free will is entirely an illusion and basic desert is a myth.
And Baruch Spinoza was a massive champion of this, right?
Yeah.
He basically looked at this grim reality and said, this is fine.
He did. Spinoza endorsed a very strong form of necessitarianism. He believed everything is categorically necessary.
No exceptions.
None. There is no free will for humans, and arguably, in his system, not even for God. Everything flows necessarily from the nature of the universe.
That sounds so bleak.
You'd think so, but you're right. Spinoza didn't view this as a tragedy at all. He argued that clinging to the illusion of free will is actually what makes us miserable.
How does realizing I'm a puppet make me less miserable? I don't get that.
Because Spinoza believed that true freedom isn't about breaking the laws of physics to make spontaneous choices. True freedom is about understanding nature's order. It's an epistemological freedom.
Epistemological, so freedom through knowledge.
Yes. When you realize that the person cutting you off in traffic was necessitated to do so by a million prior causes, their stress levels, their poor impulse control, their rushed morning, your anger just dissipates into understanding.
Because I wouldn't scream at the hurricane that blew the car into my house.
Exactly. Spinoza suggests you shouldn't scream at the driver either. They're both just forces of nature doing what nature strictly demands.
I mean, I understand the logic, and it sounds beautifully zen. But let's push that to its breaking point.
Let's do it.
Forgiving a rude driver is one thing. But what if someone harms someone you love? What if someone commits a horrific, violent crime?
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Right. Because telling me the Big Bang made them do it is not going to stop the visceral human need to hold them accountable. Giving up entirely on moral responsibility feels like amputating a core piece of what makes us human.
It is a profoundly bitter pill, and frankly, many brilliant minds absolutely refuse to swallow it. Because abandoning moral responsibility feels so deeply wrong, an entire faction of philosophers basically rebelled.
They just rejected the premise.
Pretty much. They decided that if determinism kills free will, and free will obviously exists, then determinism must be false.
Enter the metaphysical libertarians, the rebels trying to break the chain.
That's a good name for them.
And just to be perfectly clear for you listening, we are not talking about political libertarianism here.
Yeah.
We're not talking about taxes or government regulation or anything like that.
No, completely different field. We are talking about metaphysics, the fundamental structure of reality itself.
Right. So metaphysical libertarianism is the assertion that free will is real, and it is inherently incompatible with a deterministic universe.
Right. Therefore, the universe must not be a closed, perfectly predictable system. There must be gaps.
Gaps in physics.
Yes. There must be spaces where human agency can step in, break the causal chain of physics, and generate something entirely new.
Okay, but how do they actually justify that scientifically? Because saying humans can break the laws of physics sounds, honestly, like magic.
It does sound like magic to a determinist.
Let's look at the three main camps of libertarianism to see how they explain it. Starting with Roderick Chisholm's agent causal view, because Chisholm introduces a mechanism that sounds almost supernatural.
He does. Chisholm recognizes the sheer severity of the problem, so he tackles it by proposing a fundamental distinction in how causation itself works. He says there are two distinct types: transient causation and imminent causation.
Transient and imminent. Okay, walk me through the difference.
Transient causation is just standard physics. It is when one event causes another event. Chisholm uses a classic, simple example. A staff moves a stone.
Like pushing a rock with a stick.
Yes. The event of the staff swinging is the cause. The event of the stone moving is the effect. Event A causes event B.
Just normal dominoes falling.
Exactly. But Chisholm argues that if we have free will, there must be a second type of causation. Imminent causation.
And what is that?
This occurs when an agent, a conscious person, causes an event directly, without that causation being reducible to prior events in the agent's brain or environment.
Wait, so the chain doesn't go back further?
No. The agent themselves, the core self, acts as an uncaused cause.
Wait, let me wrap my head around that.
Mm.
If I am an uncaused cause, generating actions out of thin air that aren't dictated by my brain chemistry or my past, doesn't that basically make me a minor deity?
That is the exact critique, yes.
I mean, I am literally operating outside the physical laws of the universe, acting as a prime mover, like a little god.
It is a massive ontological leap, and it's the most common critique leveled against agent causation. The philosopher Richard Taylor actually pointed out that if you believe in imminent causation, you are assigning humans a power that is essentially divine.
Because we sit outside of nature.
Right. But Chisholm bites the bullet on this. He argues that unless we have this godlike power of imminent causation, unless the buck literally stops with the agent themselves, the consequence argument wins.
And we can't hold humans morally responsible.
Exactly. So for Chisholm, it's either we are prime movers or we are meat puppets. He chooses prime movers.
So Chisholm says, yes, we are prime movers because the alternative is unacceptable. But surely not all libertarians rely on being minor gods, right? What about Robert Kane and the event causal libertarians? Do they ground it a bit more in reality?
They try to, yes. Kane tries to bridge the gap between free will and modern science. He concedes to the determinist that the vast majority of our daily actions actually are determined by our formed character and our reasons.
So most of the time, we are on autopilot.
Pretty much. But, he argues, for ultimate responsibility to exist, there must be specific, critical moments in our lives where determinism breaks down. He calls these moments self-forming actions.
Or efforts of will, I think I read.
Yes, efforts of will.
Self-forming actions, like those agonizing crossroads moments, deciding whether to cheat on a test or whether to stay in a broken marriage.
Exactly those moments. Imagine you are torn between doing the highly moral thing and the highly ambitious, selfish thing.
Two strong, conflicting desires.
Right. Keynes suggests that this intense psychological tension actually corresponds to physical indeterminism in the brain. The conflicting desires create a literal neural noise, a chaotic obstacle in your physical brain.
So the moral struggle is literally static interfering with the signal.
Yes. The outcome is not predetermined by the past. The agent has to make an active effort of will to overcome this neural noise and make one set of reasons prevail over the other.
So it's a real struggle, physically and mentally.
Whichever choice you make, you do it intentionally, for your own reasons, but the outcome was genuinely open until the very millisecond the choice was made.
That reminds me of the brilliant analogy from Robert Nozick. He compared this human deliberation to quantum mechanics.
Oh, the superposition analogy. It's fantastic.
It is. He said that before you make a hard decision, your internal reasons are existing in a superposition of different weights.
Just like Schrödinger's cat.
Exactly. Just like a quantum particle can exist in multiple states at once until it is observed, you are simultaneously leaning toward the selfish choice and the moral choice.
Both are equally possible realities.
Right. And the actual act of choosing is what collapses the wave function and assigns the final weight to the reason.
It's a gorgeous analogy. It takes the bizarre, proven indeterminism of the quantum realm and maps it perfectly onto human consciousness.
It really works as a visual.
And this idea that a tiny bit of physical randomness is the key to freedom is incredibly ancient, actually. Epicurus, the Greek philosopher, proposed something very similar over 2,000 years ago.
Oh, with his concept of the atomic swerve, right?
Yes, the swerve.
I love this part. He was thinking about atomic physics before we even had microscopes.
It's pretty amazing. Epicurus believed the universe was made of atoms falling continuously through a void. But he realized that if they just fell in straight deterministic lines, there could be no human agency.
We would just be falling with them.
Exactly. So he proposed that occasionally, at completely unpredictable intervals, atoms randomly swerve from their paths.
It's just a tiny little bump.
Right. This tiny uncaused deviation in the physical world was, for Epicurus, the physical basis for human freedom. It broke the chain.
But here's where libertarianism completely loses me. I mean, let's really analyze this. Let's look at the luck objection or the mind objection.
Yeah, this is the fatal flaw for them.
Because let's say Epicurus is right or Kane is right, and there is a random quantum swerve or a burst of neural static in my brain right when I make a choice.
Okay, assuming that's true.
If my action is truly undetermined, if it is not caused by my past, my character, or my beliefs, isn't it just a random accident?
You have just perfectly articulated the most devastating counter-argument to the libertarian position. The luck objection forces us to imagine rewinding the universe.
Okay, let's run the thought experiment.
Imagine you are standing outside a burning building, deciding whether to run in and save someone or stay safe outside.
The ultimate moral choice. Stakes are high.
Very high. Now let's pause the universe right before you decide. We clone this exact universe 1,000 times. Exact same past, exact same brain state, exact same neural noise.
Cloned right down to the atom.
Yes. If libertarian indeterminism is true, then in 500 universes you run into the building, and in 500 universes you run away.
Because the outcome isn't fixed by the past. It's technically open.
Right. But if everything about you, your bravery, your love for the person inside, your fear of fire, is identical across all 1,000 universes, then what accounts for the difference in your choice?
Well, it isn't me making the difference. It's just a random neurological dice roll.
Exactly. It's just luck.
It's a cosmic coin flip. And how can a society praise me for a coin flip? You know, wow, great job. Your atoms randomly swerved in the direction of bravery today.
Right. Here's a medal for your lucky atoms.
It's ridiculous. That doesn't give me ultimate moral responsibility. That just makes me the victim of a biological lottery. I'm not the author of my life. I'm a roulette wheel.
Precisely. And this is the tragic paradox of the free will debate. Determinism seems to destroy responsibility by making us puppets of the past.
And indeterminism destroys it by making us random.
Yes. Indeterminism destroys responsibility by making our actions random, disconnecting them from our actual character. Both extremes seem to completely dissolve human agency.
Which brings us to the great philosophical magic trick. The attempt to have our cake and eat it too. The compatibilist compromise.
Compatibilism is actually the dominant view among modern philosophers today.
Really? More than the others.
Oh, by a wide margin. But it requires a complete paradigm shift. Instead of looking for gaps in physics, compatibilists decided to fundamentally redefine what the word freedom actually means.
They just changed the dictionary.
Basically, they argue that free will and determinism can both be completely true at the exact same time.
Redefining the word feels a bit like cheating, honestly, but let's see how they do it. Classical compatibilists like Thomas Hobbes and David Hume started this trend. How did they define freedom?
They argued that we have been fundamentally confused about opposites.
What do you mean?
We assume the opposite of freedom is determinism, but they say the opposite of freedom is not determinism. The opposite of freedom is coercion or physical constraint.
Okay.
Hobbes famously compared human freedom to water flowing down a river channel.
Let's unpack the river metaphor, because I think that clarifies a lot.
A river flowing down a mountain is completely determined. It is pulled by gravity, guided by the banks of the earth, obeying fluid dynamics. It cannot do otherwise.
It has to flow down.
But, Hobbes noted, the river is also at liberty to flow within that channel, provided it isn't dammed up.
If there's no physical block, it's free.
Right. For Hobbes, human freedom is simply the absence of external physical opposition. If you have the desire to do something and no external force stops you from doing it, you are free.
So if I have the desire to walk out the front door, and the door is unlocked, and no one is tackling me to the ground, I have free will.
Exactly. It completely sidesteps the Big Bang and causal chains.
It just ignores them.
Yes. It doesn't matter that your internal desire to walk out the door was caused by a prior chain of neurochemical events stretching back billions of years. All that matters is that your internal desire successfully translated into physical action without being blocked by a locked door or a prison cell.
Okay, but Arthur Schopenhauer completely dismantled that, didn't he? I remember reading his critique, and it is a massive roadblock for classical compatibilism.
Schopenhauer was brutal.
He famously said, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills."
It is a brilliant surgical critique. Schopenhauer is pointing out that Hobbes really only solved half the problem.
The physical half.
Yes, sure, your actions are free from external physical chains, but what about the internal chains? Your desires, the very engines driving your actions, were programmed into you by your genetics, your upbringing, your past trauma.
You didn't freely choose your desires.
Right.
I mean, I can freely choose to eat a giant slice of chocolate cake because I want it and no one is stopping me.
Yeah.
But I didn't choose to want the cake.
No, your biology did.
Exactly. My taste buds, my dopamine receptors, my evolutionary craving for sugar. Those things generated the desire without my permission. Am I really a free agent if my internal desires are handed to me on a silver platter by biology?
This internal constraint is exactly why compatibilism had to evolve. And in the 20th century, Harry Frankfurt provided a massive psychological upgrade called hierarchical compatibilism.
Hierarchical, so layers of desire.
Exactly. Frankfurt realized we need to look at the internal structure of the human mind. He introduced the distinction between first-order desires and second-order desires.
Walk me through the hierarchy. What is a first-order desire?
A first-order desire is a basic, primal drive directed at an object or an action. I want to eat the cake, I want to sleep in, I want to take a drug.
Basic animal instincts.
Yes, animals have first-order desires, but humans possess second-order desires. These are desires about your desires.
Desires about desires, okay?
It's your reflective, conscious self judging your primal urges.
Oh.
So I want to not want the cake because I value my health.
So it's basically the internal war between the id and the superego.
Precisely. Frankfurt uses the visceral example of a drug addict to explain freedom here. Imagine an unwilling addict.
Unwilling, meaning he wants to quit.
Right. He has a powerful first-order desire to take the drug. His neurochemistry is screaming for it. But he has a second-order desire to be clean. He hates his addiction.
They're in direct conflict.
When he inevitably takes the drug, his first-order desire wins, but it explicitly contradicts his second-order desire. Therefore, Frankfurt argues he is not acting freely. He is a helpless victim of his own lower-level biology.
But what if someone actually wants to be an addict? What if they love the lifestyle? They have the first-order desire for the drug, and their second-order desire fully endorses it. Like they say, I love wanting this drug.
Then, according to Frankfurt, the willing addict is acting freely.
Really? Even though it's an addiction?
Because their desires are in alignment. Freedom, on this account, is simply harmony within the self. It's when your actions flow from the higher-level reflective desires that you truly identify with.
So it doesn't matter where the desires came from?
It doesn't matter if those desires were ultimately determined by the universe. What matters is the internal psychological endorsement.
Wow. Okay, this brings us to one of the most famous, mind-bending thought experiments in the entire landscape of modern philosophy.
The Frankfurt cases.
Yes, the Frankfurt-style case, featuring Jones and Black. This directly attacks the consequence argument. It attacks the idea that you must be able to do otherwise to be morally responsible.
This is a cornerstone of modern free will theory.
We have to spend some time here, because this shifted the entire academic debate, set the stage for us.
It is a bit of a sci-fi scenario, but the logic is inescapable. Imagine a man named Black. Black is a brilliant, sinister neurosurgeon.
Evil scientist trope? I love it.
Right. He wants another man, Jones, to vote for a specific political candidate in an upcoming election. Let's say candidate A Black sneaks into Jones's house while he's sleeping and implants a microscopic, undetectable chip deep in Jones's brain.
Okay, evil neurosurgeon, brain chip implanted.
This chip allows Black to perfectly monitor Jones's neural activity. Now, Black sets a specific parameter. If Jones decides, on his own, using his own normal reasoning, to vote for candidate A.
One Black wants him to vote for.
Yes. If he votes for A naturally, the chip does absolutely nothing. It stays entirely dormant. But if the chip detects that Jones is even beginning to form the intention to vote for candidate B,
It activates.
the chip will instantly activate, override Jones's neural pathways, and physically force him to vote for candidate A.
Wow. It's the ultimate failsafe. So no matter what happens, no matter what Jones thinks, he is walking out of that voting booth having cast a ballot for candidate A. He literally, physically cannot do otherwise.
The alternative possibilities are absolute zero. Now, election day arrives. Jones walks into the booth. He looks at the ballot. He thinks about the economy. He weighs his values. And entirely on his own volition.
For his own reasons.
For his own authentic reasons, he decides to vote for candidate A. Black, just watches the monitor, smiling. He never pushes the button. The chip never activates.
So Jones just did what Black wanted him to do naturally.
Right. Now, Frankfurt asks the golden question. Is Jones morally responsible for his vote?
When you look at it, yes. I mean, our intuition screams yes. He voted based on his own values. He deliberated. Nobody coerced him in the moment.
Jones couldn't have done otherwise. Even if he had wanted to change his mind at the last second, the chip would have stopped him.
Oh, that is the trap. My mind is totally blown right now. Because if I say Jones is responsible for his vote, I am admitting that moral responsibility does not require the ability to do otherwise.
Exactly. And if the ability to do otherwise isn't required, then determinism is no longer a threat to moral responsibility.
That is incredibly sneaky logic.
It's brilliant. Frankfurt proves that moral responsibility isn't about having alternate timelines available to you. It's about being the authentic source of your action in the actual sequence of events.
In the one timeline that actually happens.
Right. If the action flows from your own reason-responsive mechanisms, you are responsible.
That is an incredible paradigm shift. It means that even if the universe is entirely deterministic, even if the laws of physics act exactly like the brain chip, ensuring there is only ever one possible future.
The outcome is fixed.
As long as the universe operates through our natural reasoning process, rather than bypassing it, we are still morally responsible agents.
Exactly. This revelation paved the way for a flood of modern compatibilist theories. Thinkers like John Martin Fisher developed what he calls reason responsiveness.
Reason responsiveness. What does that mean in practice?
Fisher argues that freedom is having a cognitive mechanism that is moderately responsive to reasons. If you were presented with a sufficiently strong reason to do otherwise, would your brain process that reason and change its course?
Like, if I'm going to steal an apple, but I see a cop, does my brain process the cop and stop me?
Yes. If yes, you have a reason-responsive mechanism, you are acting freely, even if the actual outcome was perfectly determined.
Anne Kadri Viveland's dispositional account is another great way to frame this, I think. She compares freedom to possessing a skill, like knowing a language.
That's a very helpful analogy.
If you are fluent in both English and French, you possess the disposition to speak French. Now, if a deterministic universe guarantees that you're going to speak English in this exact conversation, you didn't suddenly lose the capacity to speak French.
No, you still know French.
Right. The underlying disposition remains entirely intact. Possessing an ability doesn't require exercising it at all times.
The capacity remains, even if the exercise of the capacity is strictly locked in by physics.
Okay, here is where I have to step in and push back on behalf of the incompatibilists. Because there is a glaring flaw in this compromise.
Let's hear it.
Let's go back to the brain chip. Let's go back to Black, the neurosurgeon. If Black implants a chip and forces me to do something, I'm a puppet. The compatibilist says, but if the chip doesn't fire and you act on your own natural desires, you are free.
Right, that's Frankfurt's point.
But what if Black didn't implant a chip? What if Black used genetic engineering to design my brain from conception, ensuring I would naturally develop the exact desires he wanted me to have?
You are referencing Dirk Perboom's famous four-case argument, specifically the manipulation argument?
Yes, because if Black genetically engineers my desires, I'm still just his puppet, even if I'm acting authentically on the desires he gave me.
You're acting on his design.
Now, take Black out of the equation entirely. What if the entity that engineered my desires isn't an evil scientist, but just blind deterministic nature?
Evolution, genetics, physics.
Genetics, evolution, childhood trauma, socioeconomic environment. If nature programmed my desires and my reasoning mechanisms from birth, aren't I still a puppet? What is the relevant difference between being manipulated by an evil neurosurgeon and being manipulated by the blind laws of the universe?
It is the absolute sharpest thorn in the side of compatibilism. The compatibilist has to draw a very, very difficult line here.
How do they even defend that?
They have to argue that there is a fundamental qualitative difference between localized, intentional manipulation by another human agent, which bypasses or subverts your normal development, and the general, blind unfolding of natural laws that simply constitutes who you are.
But that feels like pure semantics. They're essentially saying intentional manipulation removes freedom, but blind deterministic manipulation by the universe is just called being a person.
They argue that being created by nature doesn't mean you are bypassed. Nature is what gives you the very rational capacities that make you an agent in the first place. You cannot exist outside of a causal history, so to demand freedom from your own causal history is to demand to not exist.
It is a dizzying tightrope walk. But up until this point, we have been dealing almost entirely in armchair philosophy.
Thought experiments and logic.
Exactly. We are talking about demons and brain chips and quantum analogies. What happens when we take these existential questions out of the armchair and put them into an MRI machine?
This is where it gets really concrete.
Because for centuries, philosophers debated whether the human brain was deterministic. Now we can actually open the hood and look at the engine.
And when science entered the chat, it profoundly disturbed the philosophical piece. We really have to start with Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s.
Oh, the Libet experiments. Those are famous.
Libet effectively dropped a neurobiological bomb on the free will debate.
Walk us through the methodology. What exactly did Libet do?
It was elegantly simple, actually. Libet hooked human subjects up to EEG machines to measure the electrical activity in their brains.
Okay, tracking brainwaves.
He asked them to perform a basic, spontaneous motor task like flicking their wrist or pressing a button whenever they felt the urge to do so. There was no cue. It was entirely up to them.
Total free choice. Just flick your wrist whenever you want.
Crucially, he had them watch a specialized, rapidly spinning clock face. He asked them to note the exact millisecond they consciously felt the internal urge or intention to move their wrist.
Okay, so he's measuring 3 distinct points in time. The brain activity, the conscious feeling of intention, and the actual physical muscle movement.
Exactly. Now, our intuitive folk psychology assumption is that the conscious mind is the boss. First, you consciously decide to move. Second, your brain fires the signals. Third, your wrist moves.
Right. I think, therefore I act.
But Libet found the exact opposite.
What did the EEG show?
He found a buildup of unconscious electrical brain activity, which he called the readiness potential, that started about half a second before the subject reported being consciously aware of the decision to move.
Wait, the unconscious physical brain started preparing the action before the conscious mind even knew it wanted to act.
Yes. The physical brain was already in motion. The conscious awareness of the choice was a delayed reaction to an unconscious process.
That is wild.
And modern science has taken this much further with fMRI scanners. In 2008, scientists conducted a similar experiment where subjects chose to press a button with either their left or right hand.
So an actual choice between two things, not just when to move.
Right. By analyzing the blood flow in the brain, the researchers were able to predict with 60% accuracy which hand the subject would choose up to 10 full seconds before the subject became consciously aware of making the choice.
10 seconds. The brain is 10 seconds ahead of the mind.
Yes, up to 10 seconds.
That isn't just a delay. That is terrifying. That implies the conscious mind is just a spectator sitting in the passenger seat, hallucinating that it's holding the steering wheel.
That is exactly the conclusion that neuroscientist and author Sam Harris draws. Harris uses this exact data to argue that free will is entirely an illusion.
So Harris says we're just along for the ride.
Basically, he argues that thoughts and intentions simply rise in the brain from background, unconscious physical processes that we do not author and do not control.
So the subjective feeling of choice is just a post hoc rationalization. We do something, and then our brain invents a story about why we did it.
As Harris puts it, we are mistaken in believing that our conscious intention initiates actions. Awareness is just the byproduct. It's the exhaust smoke coming out of the engine, not the driver controlling the car.
I deeply resist that reductionist view. And I know not all neuroscientists agree with Harris's bleak assessment. The outline mentions Walter Jackson Freeman III. How does he push back against this "we are just exhaust smoke" idea?
Well, Freeman argues that Harris is making a fundamental category error by identifying the self only with the sliver of conscious awareness.
So Harris is defining the self too narrowly.
Yes, Freeman says that human intention is a massive, dynamic system interacting with the environment. The unconscious processes generating the readiness potential aren't alien forces controlling you, they are you.
Right. Why should I alienate my own unconscious brain? It's my biology, my memories, my processing power. Just because the calculation happens beneath the surface of my direct awareness doesn't mean it isn't my calculation.
Exactly. Freeman says awareness isn't a boss sitting in an isolated control room. The entire dynamic system of the organism is the agency in charge.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Furthermore, Libet himself didn't entirely give up on free will either. He looked at his own data and proposed a concept known as free won't.
Free won't, the power of the veto.
Yes. Libet noticed that even though the readiness potential started unconsciously, there was a tiny 200 millisecond window between the conscious awareness of the urge and the actual muscle movement.
Just a fraction of a second.
He suggested that while the unconscious brain bubbles up urges and options, the conscious mind has a veto power. It can say, no, stop, and inhibit the action before it happens.
So we might not have the free will to generate our initial impulses, like the brain throws a craving for a cigarette at me out of nowhere, but I have the conscious free won't to suppress the impulse. I am a filter.
That's the compatibilist lifeline. Although, of course, the hard determinist will just smile and ask, well, isn't the decision to exercise the veto also generated by a prior unconscious readiness potential?
It's turtles all the way down. Let's pivot from biology to physics. We touched on quantum mechanics earlier with Nozick's analogy, but does actual, literal quantum physics say free will? There's this theory about microtubules in the brain.
Ah, yes. You are referring to the ORCH or R theory proposed by mathematical physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It is highly controversial. They argue that consciousness itself is the result of quantum gravity effects occurring inside microtubules.
And for the listener, what exactly is a microtubule?
Microtubules are structural, microscopic tubes that form the cytoskeleton inside neurons. Penrose and Hameroff suggest that these tubes are capable of sustaining quantum superposition, meaning subatomic particles inside them exist in multiple states at once.
Okay, so superposition inside the brain.
They theorize that the collapse of these quantum states into a single definite state is what actually generates moments of conscious awareness and choice, introducing genuine physical indeterminism into the brain's machinery.
So they are literally looking for the physical location of the Epicurean swerve.
That's exactly what they're doing.
But the philosopher Dirk Perboom destroys this with a statistical argument, doesn't he? I found this part of the material fascinating.
Perboom's counter-argument is absolutely lethal to the idea that quantum randomness equals free will. Perboom points out that quantum mechanics isn't just pure chaotic magic. It operates on incredibly strict statistical laws.
Right, probability distributions. It's random, but predictably random over time.
Let's say a specific physical component of an action, like the firing of a neuron, to tell the truth instead of lying, has an objective quantum antecedent probability of 32%.
Okay, so it has a 32% chance of happening naturally.
According to the foundational laws of physics, over thousands of trials, that quantum event must happen roughly 32% of the time to obey the statistical laws of the universe. And make that neuron fire 50% of the time or 10% of the time simply by choosing it, then human free will is explicitly violating the statistical laws of physics.
And if we aren't violating physics, what if we stay within the 32%?
If we don't violate the laws, then your supposedly free choices must magically align with the 32% probability distribution perfectly over the course of your life.
Which is statistically impossible to do on purpose.
Perboom calls this the problem of wild coincidences. How could a truly independent free will operate yet coincidentally perfectly match the required quantum statistics of the universe?
It makes no sense. If I'm free, I shouldn't be bound by a 32% quota. But if I break the quota, I'm breaking physics.
It's a lose-lose situation for the quantum theory.
It really leaves quantum free will dead in the water, which is exactly why so many contemporary thinkers have abandoned physics and turned to evolutionary biology to explain human freedom.
Biology offers a much more grounded, practical definition of freedom. Evolutionary philosophers view free will not as a metaphysical miracle, not as breaking the laws of physics, but as a highly advanced survival mechanism that evolved over billions of years.
Contrast this for us. How does a simple organism operate versus a complex human?
Think about a basic organism like a bacterium. It reacts purely deterministically to its immediate environment. If there is a chemical gradient of food, the bacterium automatically moves forward.
It's just a chemical reaction.
It has no internal model of the world. It is purely stimulus and response.
It's a biological Roomba.
That's a perfect analogy.
Huh.
But as brains evolved and grew more complex, organisms gained a superpower, the ability to create internal simulations of the environment.
Like visualizing the future.
A dog doesn't just react blindly. It can simulate different outcomes. Like, if I steal this food off the table, I get to eat, but I also might get yelled at by my owner.
It can weigh conflicting variables.
Exactly. It resolves ambiguities.
Yeah.
And humans have developed the most staggeringly complex simulation engines on the planet.
Our brains.
The philosopher Daniel Dennett argues that this evolutionary complexity provides us with elbow room within a deterministic universe. He coined a brilliant term for it: evitability.
Evitability, like the exact opposite of inevitability, the ability to avoid things.
Yes. Dennett points out that for billions of years of cosmic history, if an asteroid was on a collision course with a planet, the impact was absolutely inevitable. The physical laws dictated the crash.
The planet can't jump out of the way.
But humans have evolved the technological and cognitive capacity to track an asteroid, calculate its trajectory, build a deflection rocket, and change its path.
We can literally alter the timeline of the cosmos.
What was once inevitable for a dead rock is now evitable for a conscious species. Dennett argues that this capacity to foresee the future, communicate reasons, simulate outcomes, and change course is free will. It is a biological achievement, not magic.
I love that framing. It makes agency feel earned. But before we wrap up, I have to introduce one final brilliant logic bomb from the material.
Oh, McKay's loophole.
Yes. This comes from thinkers like Donald McKay and John Barrow, and it proves that perfect scientific predictability is actually impossible when dealing with humans.
The epistemological loophole. Walk us through it. It's fascinating.
Imagine Laplace's demon again, or just a super scientist with a perfect fMRI scanner. They look at my brain, they calculate all the determinist variables, and they perfectly predict that for lunch today, I am going to choose to eat a salad instead of a bowl of soup.
Okay, the prediction is locked in based on perfect math.
But if the scientist tells me their perfect prediction before I actually make the choice, I can just stubbornly choose the soup just to prove them wrong.
You can defy the math to satisfy it.
Exactly. My choice is inextricably conditioned on my knowledge. As soon as you introduce the prediction into my environment, the prediction itself becomes a new variable, altering my brain chemistry and making the original prediction false.
It's a fantastic paradox. Because humans are reflexive meaning, we can think about our own thinking. Any deterministic prediction made known to us becomes a new piece of data that we can deliberately rebel against.
Doesn't that prove that human choices grant us a practical freedom that can never be fully boxed in by an outside observer? I can always just act out of spite to break the math.
It highlights that even in a strictly deterministic universe, the subjective experience of deliberation is real, and the accumulation of knowledge is causally effective. Your knowledge of the prediction changes your resulting action.
So I am part of the calculation.
You are not just a passive observer, you are an active variable in the equation.
So we have journeyed from ancient Greeks positing randomly swerving atoms in the void to terrifying supercomputer demons calculating our every move.
We covered evil neurosurgeons implanting brain chips.
And finally, to modern MRI scanners trying to predict our wrist movements. They are all wrestling with the exact same core reality of human agency. Let's pull all of this together.
Synthesizing this massive landscape, we started by seeing how causal determinism, the unbroken chain of cause and effect, threatens our foundational belief in moral responsibility.
If our actions are the inevitable result of the remote past and the rigid laws of physics, the consequence argument suggests we are not the ultimate authors of our lives.
And basic desert is an illusion.
Right. And we saw the desperation of the libertarians who try to physically break that causal chain, either by claiming humans are godlike prime movers or by relying on quantum randomness.
only to run face first into the luck objection, which proves that random choices are just as destructive to moral responsibility as determined ones.
We then explored the compatibilist compromise, exploring how philosophers redefined freedom entirely. They shifted the focus from breaking physics to internal psychological harmony.
Through the genius of the Frankfurt-style cases, we learned that moral responsibility doesn't require the ability to do otherwise.
It just requires that our actions flow authentically from our own reason-responsive mechanisms.
Exactly.
And finally, we looked at how modern science continues to poke at these boundaries. Neuroscience gives us a dose of humility by showing that our physical brains act milliseconds before our conscious minds realize it.
But evolutionary biology lifts us back up by showing how we evolved incredible cognitive elbow room to navigate the world.
We foresee the future, and we dodge the asteroids of inevitability.
And this brings us to why this depth dive matters to you, the listener, in your everyday life. This isn't just an academic puzzle to solve over coffee.
It really isn't. How you view free will profoundly, fundamentally impacts how you live.
It dictates how harshly you judge yourself for your own past mistakes.
It dictates whether you can find the grace to forgive others when they hurt you, recognizing the heavy chain of causality that led them to that exact moment.
It changes everything. It changes how society structures its entire criminal justice system.
Right. Whether we lock people in cages to punish them because they purely deserve it, or whether we focus on rehabilitating them because they were simply caught in a destructive causal chain and need their dispositions rewired.
The philosophical foundation changes the architecture of the house we build on top of it.
It does. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Something entirely new to mull over as you go about your day, built on the evolutionary biology we just discussed.
Oh, I'm excited. Let's hear it.
Let's assume the hard determinists and the neuroscientists like Sam Harris are entirely right. Let's assume all our actions are just the result of blind evolutionary programming, unconscious readiness potentials, and unbreakable physical laws.
Okay, assuming we are pure biological machines.
If that is true, why did evolution program us to feel like we are free? Evolution is ruthlessly efficient. It eliminates waste.
That's a very good point. Consciousness takes energy.
Why spend the massive, staggering biological energy required to sustain human consciousness, self-reflection, and the intense, agonizing illusion of deliberation?
That is a haunting question.
If free will is entirely a hallucination, is it an illusion so vitally important to our survival that human society would instantly collapse into nihilism, apathy, and chaos if we actually, truly stop believing in it?
Did nature have to trick us into thinking we are in control just to keep us alive?
Is the illusion of freedom a load-bearing pillar of the human psyche?
It might just be.
Something to think about the next time you agonize over a decision. When we started, we talked about a game of billiards. We wondered if we are the player holding the cue stick or just the balls bouncing off the cushions.
And the answer might be both.
After everything we've unpacked, maybe the truth is a bizarre hybrid. Maybe we are just balls on a table, propelled by physics and prior causes we absolutely do not control.
But we are incredibly special balls.
We are balls that have evolved to be perfectly aware of the collision, to understand the angles, to simulate the future, and to marvel at the sheer geometry of the game.
And maybe, just maybe, feeling the collision and understanding the game is what makes the whole thing worth playing.
I think so too. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the baseline rules of reality. Keep exploring, keep questioning everything you think you control, and we will see you in the next installment of our philosophy series.